Hi everyone, my name is Linda and I work for Maker Ed. Welcome to Learning in the Making Live. Every week we'll bring you ideas and inspiration for projects you can do at home with some everyday materials, and we're really excited to be showing up for the first time at Maker Camp. Today we also have a really special guest host that's joining us. Ariel is an animator and a storyteller.
Hi everybody, my name is Ariel. I'm an Afro-Latina educator and I love telling stories using whatever I have. So computers, apps, pencils, anything.
So I bet a lot of young people at home are thinking to themselves right now, I didn't realize that Afro-Latinos could look so light.
Yeah, I get that a lot. My family is super mixed and from New York. My mom is Black and Cuban and my dad is Puerto Rican. Pretty much like Miles Morales, the coolest Spider-Man. So here's just a quick picture. My dad didn't make it. We're very young. We look very cool because we're in the 90s. So we're very...
That's super cool. Like I didn't realize, and I remember you mentioning that was called, like, your specific mixture is called Afro-New-Yorican. I've never heard of that before. And that reminds me of what Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie describes in her TED Talk, A Danger of a Single Story, where she talks about how we haven't really been exposed to complex stories of communities of color, specifically Black communities. So I'm super excited for us to be able to tell some complex stories and create some really fun characters today.
Yeah, that's why today we're going to be writing our own stories.
So with all that is happening about justice for Black lives, I wanted to make sure that we also tell stories that include joy and brilliance in Black, Indigenous communities of color, right? There's so much more to our stories than just oppression and poverty. We can be superheroes too. And so your challenge at home today is that we are going to create a meaningful story with characters that are complex and defy stereotypes. Some materials you might want to have on hand is some paper, some things to write with. And at the end, if you want to make a 3D representation of your characters, you can have some popsicle sticks, maybe some toilet paper rolls, or colored paper. So I have some colored paper here. So those are the materials.
All right. I have a question for you, Linda. What's a stereotype?
Great question. So let me switch to my document camera so I can tell you what is a stereotype. So a stereotype is a mistaken idea or belief many people have about a thing or a group that is based upon how they look on the outside, or a repeated story that others may have heard. So these stories are oftentimes not true or only partly true, right? So a stereotype you might have heard is that pit bulls are really dangerous. And I know that's not true because some are really, really loving. I used to live with a pit bull named Bubbles, and she was super sweet. Another stereotype that you might have heard is that Asian people are all from China. And that's not true because I'm actually Vietnamese and was born in California. Can you think of any stereotypes that you've heard?
One stereotype that I've heard that can be really dangerous is that Black people are violent. This stereotype dehumanizes our families and neighbors.
Wow, like stereotypes can be so dangerous. That's why we want to make sure our characters do not send those kind of messages.
That's right. To get started, the reason why we love stories is because we fall in love with the characters, because they seem like people that we know.
Yeah, so growing up, I loved watching Sailor Moon. And I don't know who else, maybe that really dates me. Who still watches Sailor Moon? But I loved watching Sailor Moon because there were characters that looked like me, not specifically Sailor Moon because she was very blonde, but I really loved Jupiter and Mars because they had hair very similar to me. And look at these amazing 90s outfits. These were my favorites.
And what's cool now is that there are more characters that remind us of ourselves and the people that we love. Can you think of any characters that remind you of somebody that you care about?
So right now I've been watching a lot of Avatar: The Last Airbender because it's on Netflix again, and I really love Toph and Suki. They are just really amazing characters. They come from Asian ethnicities, and they are super powerful. But it's kind of hard for me to think of some other examples right now, but we can definitely make some today.
Yeah, like what if we made our own characters? Where do you think we could start?
So on our Learning in the Making live series, we've been learning all about the design process. So we usually start with what we call iterate or iteration, where you think of ideas. And that's actually really similar to what writers call the writing process. And so you usually start with pre-writing, which is where you generate ideas. And then you create a draft, you revise your draft, you edit, and you publish. So today we're going to start with brainstorming.
All right, and I have some questions that can help you get started. I'm gonna switch to my doc cam. Face that. Okay, so the first questions are really this. Think of people that you know and love. What traits do they have that you can celebrate or turn into powers? These powers and traits might be different from traditional superheroes like Superman or Batman. Remember, though, that no one is perfect and that our characters shouldn't be either.
Right. When I think of the most traditional superheroes, the ones I think of are definitely Superman and Batman. And those are kind of stereotypes of what superheroes will look like because they're like usually like men who are white and also really rich. And I know not all heroes look like that. And so that's reproducing a stereotype, and we don't want to do that. We want our characters to be counter narratives. We want them to look like everyday people. So a counter narrative is a story that combats or fights stereotypes. So that's just a story that isn't a typical hero that you might see in comic books, and those are the kind of stories that we want to tell today.
So I was thinking we could do a quick exercise with some characters that you might know, and you can tell us how might these characters be counter narratives. So we're gonna go ahead and pull up some slides.
All right, so I'm pulling up the slides for you. So we have a set of characters that we think are counter narratives for stories or for superheroes. And the first one I'm seeing that I mentioned earlier was Toph Beifong. She is a blind character. She's super strong. She's one of the most strongest earthbenders in all of the Avatar world. And she has a lot of humor, and she never thinks of her blindness as a disability, and it doesn't hold her back. So I think that is a really cool counter narrative. We rarely see stories and heroes that have different types of abilities. Like, yeah, so Toph.
Cool.
Are there any characters here that you think really speaks to you as a counter narrative?
Yeah, I mean, I really love Toph, but I noticed one of my personal favorites, Miles Morales. Miles is Afro-New Yorican, super smart, and very artistic. He's definitely my favorite superhero because you don't often get to see mixed kids and their families in superhero movies.
Ariel, what does it mean to be mixed?
Oh, It just means that you have more than one culture at home. For example, sometimes during dinner, you'll listen to Gloria Estefan, and then other times you'll listen to Biggie. It's like that.
That's so fun. So another character that I'm seeing here is Bo from She-Ra. And I know Bo has two dads and also identifies as bisexual. And I think it's really cool to have stories that show how different people love and how different families can come together.
Wow, there's so many different parts of someone's identity that make them unique. Now that we've seen some of these examples, let's use our imagination to make some of our own. I'm going to go ahead and switch to my doc cam because I created a worksheet to help us with our characters and make them more concrete.
Okay, super cool. I don't have a printer, so what I did was I have some sheets of paper. You can also use index cards if you do, and don't worry about it if you want to have those super cool worksheets that Ariel is using. You can always come to our Maker Ed website and print them later. But right now, if you just have some paper, you're all good.
All right, let's get started. So I'm just starting with the name. My character's name is Sasha. And of course I've got a few, but I just want to focus on one right now. And her abilities is that she has X-ray vision. Okay, so X-ray vision. Okay, and her weakness is dark rooms. And her counter narrative is that she's both mixed and she's deaf. And we can keep going, of course. She's mixed, so we'll put that here. For tools, I want to come back to that, and that's always okay. You don't actually have to be able to think of everything just at the start. You can always just sort of like put a question mark and be like, oh, I'm going to come back to that. Family, she actually has a sister named Teresa. And there's this neighborhood cat that she knows. They call him Mr. Rook, like a chess piece. So those are her two family members. Languages, this is actually pretty cool. So she speaks English, a little bit of Spanish, and American Sign Language, which I'm gonna write as ASL for American Sign Language right there. And she's a girl, but you'll notice that you can put non-binary or other. You can have your character be whatever you want because it's your character. Okay, always remember that. And tell us something cool about her. She's the best Mario Kart player ever. That's like one of the cooler facts about her. You'll never beat her, ever. Yep. And I can go into more of my characters. I've got a few. I've got Sasha. And so I put this on a sheet that looks more like flashcards. I've got Sasha. And I've got Teresa. So Sasha is deaf and Teresa isn't, but Teresa can speak ASL too, okay? And then I've got my character, Mr. Rook. He's a cat, and his superpower is just being a super kitty. His weakness, of course, is catnip. And then I've got this other character here named Mr. Panini. Mr. Panini's super ability is super smell, and his weakness is, of course, paninis. I don't really know anything about his family. I know that he's a boy, and I know that he's really, really grumpy. Linda, what characters do you have?
Your characters are so cute. So we're seeing some comments on Facebook. Felicia says that they really like Toph 2 and that they recognize Aang as the avatar that fights the Fire Lord. So I am seeing some Avatar The Last Airbender fans back home. That is amazing because I am a huge fan. Okay, so just a reminder, some things that you want to think about when you are creating your characters. You want to give them a name, right? And you want to give them abilities. What are their superpowers? So sometimes I like to think of like people I know and things that they're good at, and I turn that into a superpower. So I've been thinking a lot about my characters, and my characters are going to be named after plants because I like the idea of plants that and showing that they're growing. And so my main character's name is Dandelion. but she can also be named Dan. That's what people call her. Her abilities are that she's super strong. So she has super strength. Her weakness is water because she can't swim. Just like me, I cannot swim. And I like to think that I'm really, really strong. So those are the abilities that I'm giving my character. Her race or ethnicity. So ethnicity is your culture. And like me, she is Vietnamese American because she was born here in the United States. So her family, her mom and dad are Vietnamese refugees. Her gender, I've been using the pronouns she and her. That means that she identifies as a girl. Her counter narrative is that even though she's really small, even though she's small, she's only like 5 feet tall, but she's strong, and villains need to watch out. Okay, so I wrote these down so that you can see them, but I also made her a card here. I drew a little dandelion to show that she's named after the dandelion. And here is some imagery of her. She has glasses just like me and has some dandelions in her hair. And I usually have short hair, so I drew her with short hair.
Wow, Linda, that is so cool. I'm super curious. Do you have any like villains in it? In your story?
I do have some villains, but I'm going to be honest, I spent most of my time developing all my other characters. So my villain is not as robust. So these are my other cast of characters, the other superheroes that are a part of her squad. There are twins. So these are twins, Clover and Sorrel. Just like the plants, look very similar, but are a little bit different. Their abilities are speed, and their counter narrative is that they're super hyper and diagnosed with ADHD, but they're super funny and kind, and they each have really great hobbies. So Clover is really good at music and dancing, and they identify as non-binary, so their gender pronouns are they, them. But Sorrel is really good at gardening and identifies as a girl. Their weakness is sugar because they get really hyper, they can't have sugar, and they also don't like rules. I also have Rose. Rose wears a leather jacket that can shoot thorns, which is super cool. But my villain has no name, so they just call him Mr. X. But Mr. X, what he does is that he turns colorful spaces white and gray. So he turns beautiful places that have lots of color and plants just really dark and gray. And our superheroes don't like that because they love music and art and having plants because they're named after plants.
Wow, so intense, so cool.
Okay.
Mhm.
So I remember that you said that yours was Mr. Panini.
Mhm.
And that yeah, I think that's super funny.
Yeah,
Okay.
He's just very grumpy and mysterious, and he doesn't like to get to know his neighbors. That's his big villainous thing.
Yeah, so everyone back home, I know you didn't get as much time to think of your characters like we did because we've been thinking about this for a while now. You can go ahead and pause the video and take your time to think of your characters, or you can always come back and view this part later. So you can continue following along with us if you want. All right, so now that we've finished our characters, Ariel, what do we do next?
So characters are influenced by their surroundings. So I was thinking the next thing we could do is work and build on the setting of our stories.
Ooh, exciting.
I'm gonna go ahead and switch to my document camera. Document. All right, so setting is the when or where that something takes place. It can be somewhere real or somewhere make-believe. So I have some examples. A real place is Oakland, right? And this really cool graffiti is there. You should definitely check that out if you haven't seen it. Or New York. New York is definitely real. Or you can do space. You can do a lunar base, which doesn't quite exist yet. Or you could do a deep, deep magical forest. It's whatever works for you, whatever you want to do. Okay, and we made out a sheet. So I'm thinking that we go ahead and pull the sheet out of our packet, or if you don't have it printed out, you can go ahead and do what Linda did, which is just use the prompts.
Mm-hmm. So I just did mine on a sheet of paper. This is my setting.
Very cool.
Okay, so your setting is the where and when your story takes place, right? And our characters are always going to be influenced by their surroundings. So we want to really think about like what kind of place we want our superheroes and our villains to live. So I'm seeing you have some things written down in yours.
Mm-hmm. Mine is the location, the name is really amazing. It's the backyard, and the when is now, so 2020. It's in South Carolina. And the idea is there are two houses. There are the girl's house and then Mr. Panini's house. And in between the house is a giant magical forest, which I haven't drawn yet. And nobody really knows what's going on in the forest there, but they hear that there are ruins. So that's my setting. And then of course, after I draw it, I can draw other stuff that's gonna go in the setting.
Very cool. Okay, so here's mine. Mine is sort of built on a real place. Mine is based off of Oakland. So mine, but it's like a new Oakland, so it's going to be called New Oakburbia, just to say that Oakland turned into a little bit of a suburb. So New Oakburbia, and the where and when is so as gentrification is taking place. And gentrification is when like lots of people who are not from a neighborhood move in and change it a lot. So as gentrification is taking place. And so the backstory of New Oakburbia is that it used to be really colorful, and musical, but is now really boring. And some cool facts are that New Oakburbia has the land has indigenous tribes. Okay. And so I have some imagery here. I drew the before and then the after. So before, New Oakburbia used to be really colorful with lots of music and lots of plants. But now with Mr. X, who turns everything really white and gray, all the buildings are just really boring and there are lots of like brown fences and it's just plain grass, no more flowers.
Wow, Linda, this is so cool. I'm really excited. It's lots of detail, lots of thought went into this. Your backstory is super good.
Okay. So now that we have our characters, or at least the idea of our characters and our setting, if you want to create more 3D representations of your characters, we can also do that to prepare for our storytelling next week. So something that I've done is I use some popsicle sticks. So I have this popsicle stick that I'm going to turn it into a little puppet. And if you don't have a popsicle stick, you can also use a toilet paper roll, or you can also just use paper, right? So here's what I did. I have this popsicle stick. I cut out Dandelion's hair. I like traced it and cut out Dandelion's hair, or Dan's hair. I also cut out a little dandelion headband. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to glue this hair onto this popsicle stick and this headband. I also drew some eyes on here if you can't see it. And then some leaves as clothing. So I cut out some leaves here. And this is my quick puppet. And you can use all types of materials to make your puppets. You can even make a diorama. If you have a toilet paper roll, I'm going to create rows. So using this, I also made some cutouts. So for Rose, I made Rose a little headband. And to show Rose's leather jacket, I cut out this black paper. And I'm just going to glue the black paper on the bottom. So this is going to be Rose's leather jacket. So think about what your characters are going to be wearing, and you can make them some clothes. And then I'm going to attach the headband. Need to glue it really well, otherwise it's going to pop open like this bottom one. Here we go. Gonna hold it, really press it on there. Okay, I'm gonna try this again. Okay, so I have the headband, some clothes, and Rose needs a face. So I am going to draw on some eyes. I'm really not good at drawing eyes, so I'm just gonna do some like closed eyelids. Maybe with some lashes. And a small mouth. And this is Rose. This is going to be so much fun for us to use next week to tell our stories. So these are two different puppets that I was able to make. Ariel, I know you are using a different medium to tell your story next week, so I'm really curious how you created your characters.
So I'm animating, so I'm not sure if you can see, but I went ahead and I made a puppet. It's one of a few. She's got like hinges. This is Sasha. I have to add feet. I like her little afro puffs. So yeah, I'm going to make puppets of all of the characters, and then I'm going to take pictures and pictures and animate it. And I have to draw the whole thing.
Love that. How did you make the arms move?
I use these cool little things called snaps, but you can also use a hole puncher and brads, which you can get in any store, so you can just order it online. In fact, some people use little pieces of Play-Doh and they don't actually attach them. They just put them flat and they like move the arm and then take a picture. So you could use Play-Doh even if you wanted to.
Whoa, yours is super advanced. Mine doesn't even have arms.
I adore yours, so
Mine
no
doesn't
worries.
even have arms or limbs. Mine are just two. So yeah, everyone who's following along at home, these are just some examples that you can make your characters more 3D. I'm also going to show you some examples on a slide that I have, just so that you can have some more ideas of what to do. So let me share my slide with you. Okay, so this is again the toilet paper roll. So you can really expand your imagination about how to use these rolls. The next one is what I tried to do was to create some puppets out of popsicle sticks. And then if you wanted to create a setting, you can use a shoebox or any kind of box to create a diorama. This person was really advanced. They created a whole jungle scenery. And I think that would be super exciting to use to tell our stories next week. Okay, so now that we have our characters and we have our setting, we are ready to create our story. But we are going to be doing that next week because we are all out of time. So make sure you join us for part 2 on the Maker Ed channel, where we will be crafting our storyline. We want to see what you made, so share your project with us with at MakerEd or hashtag MakerEdAtHome on Twitter or Instagram. And we would love to share what you made and inspire others to do more making at home. You can also find a project guide for this activity in both English and Spanish, as well as super cool worksheets that Ariel was using. So those worksheets that you saw, you can download those and print them for free off of our website. And there are also a bunch more resources on our blog for this specific activity. So make sure that you check our description below on our YouTube channel.
And if you want more ideas on hands-on maker projects that you can do at home, you can visit the link in our description below that has some links for resources, which, just to repeat, and join us again next week for part 2. We look forward to seeing you. All of our stories, we want to hear your stories too.
And as always, we'll be learning in the making. Thank you for joining Family Maker Camp today. We're just going to say bye to our characters. Bye.
Nice job.
Thank you.
That was really good.